Hi everyone, I'm Varnika, Senior Research Analyst at Twimble. Joining me today is Aveek. Hi Aveek, how are you?
Hi, Vanika. I'm good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today. So, welcome to Twimble Leadership Insights in Virtual Banking. So,
Thank you.
you say that you're a fintech and a digital thought leader. Why don't you begin by telling us more about yourself?
Okay. I think I started very early in the banking, in the traditional banking sector, and
Mhm.
uh, and I first opportunity I got was to work in the payments when I entered banking.
Okay.
And I think that is the time that payments industry as a whole was undergoing a very rapid transformation. A lot of things
Mhm.
were happening, things were changing, and I found that I loved this differentiated banking more than the traditional
Mhm.
banking, and I somehow fell in love with fintech.
Right.
And Since then, I guess I have never looked back and
Mhm.
never questioned my choice or my liking, because this is something that I like to do, love to do. And
Right.
so, working from payments, I've worked across five, six organizations in digital lending, in
Mhm.
digital payments, across
Right.
insurance, in microfinance, retail lending, and
Mhm.
yes, currently also working in that. And now we are in a in a platform economy. So
Mhm.
a lot of things that we are doing, whatever it
Mhm.
is it actually we are doing, it's completely
Right.
having a platform centric approach.
Right.
And we are in a way we can say that we are re-engineering the whole banking world in terms of digital.
Right, right. That's interesting. So, Avik, I would like to understand that how would you describe neobanking or virtual banking as a phenomena? Because how it's coming up is from the underbanked and unbanked population, which is widely being recognized today, and especially in emerging nations like the APAC region, where the percentage of unbanked population is very high as compared to the Western world. But how would you describe these terminologies?
Okay. So you see, over the last decade, we have
Mhm.
witnessed a phenomenal shift in the landscape of banking and financial services.
Right.
It has been taking place at a very dizzying pace, and
Mhm.
I think the changes, the primary changes which have so far taken effect, are number one, the exponential transmutation in the customer expectations and customer
Mhm.
consumer behavior.
Right.
Second is creation of new customer segments. Third
Right.
is the evolution of very innovative digital business models.
Mhm.
And I would say fourth and not last but least and very important, the entry of non-banking technology players into the
Mhm.
financial services segment. Now, the entry of these players have actually brought about a great disruption. But
Right.
also, on the other hand, they have added a very new dimension to banking.
Right.
And these players, they what they are able to do is that, but before that, every day as day goes by, the way we
Mhm.
exchange values in the ecosystem is becoming
Mhm.
more and more digital.
Right.
Be it from fast-moving consumer goods to education, be it from from purchasing food to
Mhm.
making payments, we have
Mhm.
been completely wrapped in this
Right.
digital world. And as a result, it becomes very important that these players who come up, they
Mhm.
are able to adopt to our changing lifestyle.
Mhm.
While banks are trying to do so, these startups, what we call as neobanks, because they startup before going on to become a full-fledged neobank, they
Right.
are able to scale up much more easily with
Mhm.
their driven approach, a platform-centric approach,
Right.
using open APIs and other other emerging technologies. They're
Mhm.
able to cater to us much better and much
Right.
faster, and the
Right.
experience that they provide is uber. So
Mhm.
what your banks are doing is that they are providing us very differentiated banking services in a hyper personalized manner. And that is what is actually changing the game. So, and globally, this
Mhm.
was a $0.6 billion industry as projected in 2018. Currently,
Right.
it's going to be as there's a market research firm which has come up that it's almost going to have a 528 billion share by 2027. What's interesting again is that there were only around six players before 2010, but
Right.
currently, if you see, we have crossed the mark of 100 on a global scale, with I think
Right.
Europe accounting for almost 50% of these
Mhm.
players, followed
Yes.
by US,
Yes.
US at almost 30%, and then
Right.
followed by the APAC region.
Right.
However, in India, we regulations do not allow for the presence of 100% digital banks, and
Right.
neobanks being banks which are 100% digital without any physical branches, as per
Mhm.
RBI guidelines, that's not possible. So
Right.
here it works more on a partnership model with the
Mhm.
existing traditional players. And given the way in which this entire is shaping up ecosystem,
Mhm.
I think neobanks are there to stay. It's a growing phenomena, and
Right.
it's there to stay.
Interesting you say that it's a growing phenomena, and when you say that it's 100 plus now industry, it's growing at that large scale. Do you think the COVID-19 crisis is giving it a digital push, a further acceleration which was not there maybe a year or 2 year back, but today it is there, and now we're going to see an exponential rise from 100 to a 200 maybe, which took from 6 to 100 in a couple of years. Maybe it'll have faster when it comes to today's scenario.
Okay, well, you see, uh, let me put it this way.
Right.
COVID-19,
Mhm.
even before COVID-19 came into our life,
Right.
I will say that we had already started focusing a lot on
Mhm.
digital initiatives. Neobanks
Mhm.
had already started gearing up because they have understood
Right.
that there are unmet needs in the economy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Going further, it's a very unprecedented situation. This entire
Right.
situation globally is very unprecedented. So, and not being an economist, I won't be able to exactly say how much economic impact it's going to have. But yes,
Yeah.
definitely, the need for
Mhm.
digital services has
Mhm.
gone up. It has shot
Yeah.
up. The need for digital services has shot up exponentially. Banks
Right.
have been trying to focus on that with
Yeah.
internal automations, with
Yeah.
enhancing employee experience, with enhancing
Mhm.
understanding that we need to now go ahead full-fledged and improve the customer experience, reach out to the
Right.
customers in a digital fashion, because now it's more of a necessity as well.
True that. Yeah.
Neobanks also do know that, and
Mhm.
given the problem that we currently see in the unmet
Mhm.
segment, as you last time pointed out, there's a
Yeah.
lot of there are a lot of issues in the SME and the MSME segment,
Mhm.
especially in their catering to their financial requirements and their needs. And to
Right.
top of all, the liquidity crisis or the crunch
Mhm.
that these players often face. So yes, I
Right.
think that be it COVID-19 and
Mhm.
going forward also, neobanks will definitely take a center stage because they will be able to help the traditional players, and
Right.
also they will be able to help the unmet segment to
Mhm.
come together.
True. So when you say unmet segment, so where do you think the actual customer acquisition or customer retention segments of these neobanks and virtual banks lie, which they often describe themselves as underbanked and underserved? I understand SMEs is one of the segments, but do you think there are other segments also that these neobanks and virtual banks are targeting?
Okay, so
Hmm.
okay. You can break it into three things. One is you can break it
Right.
down into segment, you can break it down into demography, and you can break it down into products and services. and then you can sort of match these up against each other. So on a segment, yes, there is a SME segment, there is a MSME segment, there is
Right.
what we call as the Gen Z segment or the millennial segment as well.
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yeah.
yes, these are there.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to the type of players, there are
Mm-hmm.
customers who are primarily from who are business players like SMEs, individual owners. You have blue collar workers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the range is very large, and you also there are players who are trying to work on the front of rural banking, or trying to
Mm-hmm.
act as a ways to garner financial inclusion. So
Right.
yes, these segments will be there. And coming to
Mm-hmm.
the products and the services, I would say
Mm-hmm.
that business banking, lending, wealth management, as well as your other value added services which the banks are unable to
Right.
offer, these
Right.
are becoming more and more relevant and more important.
Okay. True. Yes. So when you say these are becoming relevant and important, and they have such varied segments and varied products, so where do you think that the neobank and virtual banks are actually positioning their business models? How do you think they differ from a digital banking service that is being provided by a traditional bank versus a pure play neobank?
Okay, see, uh, there are two parts to it.
Yeah.
uh, okay, so first, yes, definitely the
Mm-hmm.
business models of neobanks and that of traditional banks do
Mm-hmm.
differ from each
Right.
other. Now, while traditional banks we know have very structured and very the business
Mm-hmm.
models of traditional banks across the industries are
Mm-hmm.
more or less at par or same, with some
Right.
differences here and there. But for neobanks, it's quite different. So
Mm-hmm.
from they have a multiple business models in place which
Mm-hmm.
differ from each other according to the segment they cater to, according to the
Right.
product or the services they're offering, according to the way in which they are doing business. And
Mhm.
also, do not have a one particular thing. They may have a range. For example, it
Mhm.
can be from a subscription based service to a
Right.
multi-tiered subscription based services, from fees which they charge customers
Mhm.
for some additional value added services, to
Right.
uh, to I will say also getting a part of the fee income that they generate from their
Mhm.
partner or collaborating banks, as well
Right.
as the fact that they like, yes, but like traditional banks, they also sort of
Mhm.
earn between the money flowing in and the money flowing out.
Interesting. So, when you say they have separate models, one of the things that really add to their success is the partnerships and the collaborations that the virtual banks are doing, especially in terms of their periphery. So, like you said, we have platform is very essential, and you can't do everything on your own. So, you need to have the right set of partnerships and collaborations to operate. So, where do you think the most valuable operating strategies exist for these banks? And how do you think they are positioning themselves?
Okay. See,
Hmm.
to be very honest, as I told you earlier, that in India, neobanks cannot operate as a independent banking entity, and they have
Right.
to partner with
Yeah.
traditional players. Now, you see, from a customer's perspective, it is
Mm-hmm.
important to understand that your trust is mostly with your banks. You will not
Right.
place your money with someone you do not know.
Mm-hmm.
So banks are always the like the trusted agents who safeguard your money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also need certain services, certain products, and in
Mm-hmm.
some way in which the banks are unable to offer. And that is where
Right.
neobanks come in with
Mm-hmm.
their differentiated products, with the hyper personalized products, they are able to uh, build on top of the existing products of the bank's service and
Right.
products and offer it to the customers. You can take examples in the industry if you look at,
Right.
for example, there is Open.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Open works in a way that it provides business banking services to the
Right.
customers.
Right.
Now, while at the back end, the base account is that of
Mm.
ICICI Bank, for
Yeah.
example, first bank that they started with.
Right.
Now, what it essentially means is that
Mm.
customers or SME or MSME or business banking customers of ICICI Bank,
Right.
apart from the services that they are getting from the bank, they are also able to use the platform of Open in order
Mm.
to cater to their other needs. For example, account management, taxations,
Right.
maybe payroll integrations, and other things.
Right.
So this is the way in which the ecosystem is shaping up, that we are not always looking at banks are not always looking at building their own capabilities every time. These are the
Mm-hmm.
partnerships in which they are able to leverage and add
Right.
to the customer's value. So what happens is it's a three-way game. So it is the
Right.
customer who is not losing out, who is also getting a lot of additional benefits and in an extremely
Mm-hmm.
handsome manner. Second, the banks, they are able to not only retain customers, they are also
Mm-hmm.
able to serve the customers better. And the
Right.
neobanks who are able to solve a business problem that exists in the industry. So this is the way in which you can say the partnership model is opening up. Open is one
Mm-hmm.
example, and in India, I think we are coming up with a lot of other players who are,
Right.
for example, you can talk about InstaPay, you can talk about
Yeah.
Neo.
Yeah.
Players are coming up, and it will be there.
Right. So very interestingly, you put that. So these banks, what they're doing is they're building blocks over traditional models to build hyper personalized capabilities which the traditional banks cannot offer. So what confuses me is that the drive for neobanking comes from the emergence of open APIs because these building blocks are being created through the data sharing that is happening. So if you could just explain in brief what do we mean, and then that will open the doors for us for our next conversation.
Okay. Uh, mm, mm, See, APIs can be considered as one of the key factors which are driving or which are contributing towards the success of neobanks and
Right.
neobanking. All now application programming interfaces, what
Mm-hmm.
we call APIs. See, they have been there for quite some time. It's nothing new in the banking
Mm-hmm.
segment. However, the emergence of open APIs have
Right.
actually been a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask me what open APIs are, then I would
Mm-hmm.
say that in the context of banking,
Mm-hmm.
the APIs that banks open up for the third parties to access
Right.
in order to get access to financial information,
Mm-hmm.
so as to develop their own applications and
Right.
services and provide it to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and giving the customer flexibility for access
Right.
and also the transparency is what we call
Right.
as open APIs.
Great. So I think what we can do is we can have another session just on APIs and API banking. So I'll leave that away for our next session. And with that, I would like to have some closing notes from you. So, what do you think
Yeah.
is the future for neo banking and virtual banking? We've discussed it, but in terms of imperatives, what do you think is going to be how the virtual banking world will look like?
Uh, well, I think the going ahead,
Mm-hmm.
as we are getting more and more digital and even everyone is becoming more and more savvy with technology,
Right.
smartphones and with smartphones coming up with inbuilt capabilities, We will see digital banking or neo banking taking a center stage in the
Mhm.
banking ecosystem, wherein the offers and services that they will be able to provide, banks, what they are doing is currently they are creating an ecosystem around them. They are
Mhm.
fintech players who are providing banking as, you can say, banking as a platform or banking as a service.
Right.
Now, rightly, as you know, once it was said that banking, the way in which banking is done, that is
Mhm.
what needs to be, that's what needs a little change.
Mhm.
So, yes, they are catering to the customers, they're offering
Right.
them personalized banking services,
Mhm.
and these are currently and these will be leveraged by traditional banks. There, not everyone has the, the appetite. Not all banks
Mhm.
have the appetite invest a lot in technology and invest a
Right.
lot into a lot of other things. So what they
Mhm.
do is they understand this, and that is the reason they partner with these players. And these
Right.
players are run by, and these players which are run or often operated by extremely smart people in the industry, and
Mhm.
they understand the business problem, and they
Mhm.
know what is the problem, what is needs to be done to solve it.
Right.
And that is the reason that these players, everyone, is now coming up together.
Mhm.
While in a global context, neobanks are operating. A lot of neobanks are operating independently. You talk about
Right.
N26. You talk about Revolut,
Mhm.
uh, and there are, I think, a lot of other
Starlink is
banks were
there.
doing that.
Yeah.
And there's Sterling. There's, I mean, more than 100 names.
Yeah.
There's Monzo. Uh,
There's also.
there's Morven. There's Morven.
Huh.
You name it. So while they can operate as individual entities, but
Mhm.
what in India, what we are seeing is that neobanks are complementing the traditional banks.
Right.
So it's not that they stand apart or they are
Right.
rivals. I will say they're more of people complement each
Right.
other, and that in
Yes.
turns is beneficial to the customers.
Great. So, Avik, we're going to have you again to talk more about open APIs and API banking and how it differs from neo banking in depth. For now, thank you so much. It was pleasure having you here, and we look forward to our more conversations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.